The strangest thing about couples who stay together for 30 years is that they don't actually stay married to the same person. Not really. Because over 3 decades, the person beside you changes. Again, and again, and again. The confident version becomes uncertain. The strong version becomes tired. The dreamer becomes realistic. The healthy version grows older. And somehow, despite all of those changes, some couples keep choosing each other. Most people look at marriages that last 30 years and assume one of two things. Either they found their soulmate, or they settled. But psychologists suggest something far more interesting. The couples who survive decades together usually didn't find a perfect person. They learned how to love an imperfect person through constant change. Because if you've been with someone long enough, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Eventually, you meet every version of them. The ambitious version, the insecure version, the grieving version, the angry version, the exhausted version, the version that loses faith, the version that no longer resembles the person you first fell in love with. And they meet every version of you too. This is the part modern culture rarely talks about. People often imagine successful relationships as a story of compatibility. But long relationships are actually a story of adaptation. Because no one remains the same person for 30 years. Not you, not your partner, not anyone. Life changes people. Success changes people. Failure changes people. Parenthood changes people. Loss changes people. Time changes everyone. The real question isn't whether two people can stay in love. It's whether they can keep finding each other after both of them have changed. And surprisingly, that's exactly what many long-lasting couples learn to do. Relationship researcher Helen Fisher spent decades studying romantic love and found that the intense emotional phase people associate with falling in love was never designed to remain at maximum intensity forever. Something else eventually takes its place. Attachment, trust, emotional security. At first, that sounds less romantic. Until you understand what it really means. Imagine waking up beside someone who knows your entire story. Not the edited version. Not the version you show strangers. The real version. They remember who you were before the success. Before the gray hair. Before the disappointments. Before life became complicated. They remember the dreams you once had. The fears you never told anyone else. The mistakes that still embarrass you. The promises you kept. And the ones you didn't. After enough years together, understanding starts showing up in small ways. One reaches for the other's coffee without asking. One hears a door close and immediately knows something is wrong. One already knows how a story ends because they've heard it 20 times before. One wakes up at 2 in the morning and finds the other asleep in a chair with the television still on. And instead of irritation, they feel something unexpected. Comfort. Because years of attention create a kind of understanding that cannot be rushed. And maybe that's why long marriages often look boring from the outside. A culture obsessed with excitement struggles to recognize the value of familiarity. But familiarity is not the same thing as boredom. Psychologically, familiarity creates safety. Over time, your nervous system learns that this person is not a threat. Their presence becomes reassuring, predictable, calming, a place where the mind can finally rest. And the older people get, the more valuable that becomes. Because eventually life begins testing every relationship. One day, one of you loses someone you love. Another day, a dream you've spent years building quietly falls apart. One year, money becomes tight. Another year, health becomes fragile. One day, the person who once seemed invincible is sitting in a hospital room. Every long marriage eventually enters seasons where love feels difficult. Seasons where patience matters more than passion. Where commitment matters more than emotion. Where showing up matters more than feeling inspired. And this is where many relationships break. Because feelings are powerful, but feelings are temporary. What carries people through difficult years is often something deeper. The decision to remain. Not because everything feels perfect, but because what they built together has become part of who they are. Psychologist Arthur Aaron discovered that close partners gradually begin incorporating each other into their sense of self. In other words, after decades together, your lives become psychologically intertwined. That's why couples married for decades often stop speaking in terms of I. They speak in terms of we. We survived that. We remember. We got through those years. At some point, the relationship stops feeling like two separate stories. It becomes one shared history. And shared history is powerful because memories become anchors. The difficult years you survived together. The challenges you overcame together. The moments nobody else remembers anymore. All of it becomes part of the bond itself, which leads to something even deeper. The deepest role of a long-term partner is not simply lover. It's witness. The witness to your adult life. The person who saw who you were and who you became. The person who remembers versions of you that no longer exist. The person who was there for chapters of your life that have disappeared from everyone else's memory. And perhaps that is what modern culture misses. Love is not only about finding someone exciting enough to keep your attention. It's also about finding someone willing to stay long enough to truly know you. The Harvard study of adult development found that strong relationships are among the greatest predictors of happiness and well-being later in life. Not because they eliminate suffering, because they give people someone to carry life with. And maybe that's the real secret behind couples who stay together for 30 years. Not endless passion, not perfect compatibility, not luck. Something quieter, something less dramatic. They stopped asking, "How excited do I feel right now?" and started asking, "Who is still beside me when life becomes difficult?" Because in the end, one of the rarest experiences a human being can have is this: to be fully known, to be seen at your best and your worst, to change 100 times across a lifetime, and still have someone remain. Because one day, your memories will become crowded with people who disappeared. Friends, colleagues, relatives, entire chapters of your life. And if you're fortunate, one person will still be there. The only other witness who remembers the story exactly as you lived it. And when the world has forgotten who you once were, they still remember.